Welcome to episode 3 of Scary Stories with Zane Morgan Crafts.
My girlfriend and I were in Italy visiting the Palladino village, which is the ruins around the Colosseum. I had begun to enter one of the ruined buildings, and not even a step in, a strange feeling overwhelmed me. Out of nowhere, I felt my entire body just go numb, as if there were millions of ants crawling all over me. I almost fell, but my girlfriend grabbed me and asked me if I was alright. Apparently, I had been ghostly pale, like all the blood had drained from me. She claimed that she had been calling me only 10 feet away several times, and I wasn't even fazed by it. I hadn't heard her. I had completely blanked. I don't remember specifically what I had seen while in this state, but I remember being elsewhere. Later, I had gone to see a friend of my girlfriend's. She does hypnosis, and according to her, I have a really old soul. And apparently I was alive back in the ancient times when the Colosseum was bustling. This has led me to think that being in the Palladino village had sparked something in me, and maybe I ran into my past self or even stepped in a place of significance to me. I just know that this wasn't the first time I had been in that place. It's strange, but it's comforting. Halloween originally was a day of honoring your ancestors, so I suppose the story fits. When I was a teenager, my mother passed away from a battle with lung cancer. I've gone through my grieving processes, and I'm in a good spot now. To finish out high school, I ended up moving in with my aunt. She lived in an isolated area, in the middle of corn and soybean fields. One night in October, after taking my shower, I ascended the creepy metal spiral staircase that led up to my bedroom. On the way up, I had caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. At the time, I really didn't think much of it. My cousin smoked on occasion, so it wasn't anything out of the usual. The night went on, and I got situated and laid down on my bed, gazing up at the ceiling, trying to fall asleep. And as I drifted off to sleep, that familiar smell of cigarette smoke filled my nostrils once again. The smell had materialized out of nowhere. All of a sudden, all the sheets and blankets over me lifted and shifted as if to tuck me in. At the time, I was absolutely horrified. I was frozen in terror and just kept my eyes closed, praying to fall asleep. Well, reflecting back on it throughout the years, the familiar smell of cigarettes, the general tenderness of whatever I experienced, I've come to the conclusion that it was my mom tucking me in bed one more time. It was really early in the morning in April of this year. I was getting ready for school and my desk had moved on its own. I mean, that in itself is strange. However, a few seconds later, my X-Acto knife went flying off of my desk. And for some reason, in my freaked out state, my reaction was to try and catch it. I now have a scar on my finger from my X-Acto blade stabbing me as I tried to catch it. Nothing's happened to me since then, but I'm now eternally afraid of that X-Acto knife. It now lives in a box, and I try not to have random sharp things laying out in case something like this happens again. But my hobby supplies now live in the basement. There's an energy in my room. Sometimes I'll be laying in bed and it feels off. But as soon as I turn on a light, it disappears. So I guess I'll just live with it. Thank goodness I was with about 20 other people during this story. My experience happened when I was in college. We were in rehearsal for Midsummer Night's Dream. I was fight directing and doing the choreography. The story takes place in a theater, which, if you didn't know, they're pretty notorious places for paranormal, spiritual activity. I've had a couple weird things happen to me while in this theater. One such experience happened when I walked past one of the fire doors, which, if you're unaware, they're very heavy doors that are set on cables. They're made to seal off the space to prevent the spread of fire. Anyways, I walked through the fire doors and they were latched, completely secured. But as soon as I got through that door, they slammed behind me. And like I said, these doors are not meant to close unless there's a fire, and there was no fire. No idea how that happened or why. But that door slammed behind me very quickly as I was exiting. It scared the crap out of me. So that's a precursor for my next story. Flash forward a few years later, we were in the middle of rehearsal. This particular production was a main stage production, meaning we were open to the entire house. We were back at the tech table, everything was set up, and everyone was there. Cast, crew. Our director was giving a note. And mid-note, right in the middle of this theater, the worst, blood-curdling cry I've ever heard in my life. I don't know what a banshee sounds like, but I imagine that's what this sounded like. It stopped rehearsal. It wasn't anyone messing around. Literally everybody froze. The director paused and said, "Okay, we all heard that, right?" And everybody agreed. We just acknowledged it and continued working. However, that sound that was produced, it'll never be something I forget. And I hope I never hear it again. Thank goodness I was in a room with other people, because I don't want to know how I would have handled that alone. This is quite possibly the most supernaturally active home that I've ever lived in. As I've stated in episode 1, I had briefly lived on a horse farm in Pennsylvania. Let me help paint a picture of the home for you. It sat up on a slight grassy hill overlooking cornfields, and to the left there were horse pastures and woods. To the right was a thin tree line that led up the main road. Now, the home itself, it was plaster, but it was like a creamy off-white plaster with some painted red trim and a black slate roof. You could tell that this home was pieced together. It looked like 3 boxes were stuck together, side by side. Being a very old home, the older sections didn't have central heat or anything. Every room had a fireplace. The house was 3 stories, not including the basement. The staircases of the home were different. They were built into the walls, concealed behind panels. So now that you have an idea of the house, let's get into the story. So when we first moved into the home, the basement had a very dark vibe. So much so that my mom had decided not to use the laundry room down there, and we opted to go into town to the laundromat, which was quite a drive. There was a section of concrete missing from the wall near the stairs, and with the section missing, there's just a hole into the earth. I don't remember much about it other than my siblings and I had found a very old red wine in the hole. The seal had failed a long time ago and there were floaters inside of it. With that being said, it was a cellar, so we just used it for storage, and literally everything that we had stored down there by the time we moved out had to be thrown away due to mold. The door that had led down to the basement connected to the dining room, and it was made from wood paneling, so it matched the wall that it was on. There was a chained side lock that kept it closed, but it rarely stayed locked, and the door always seemed to find itself cracking open, and the stairs beyond it always creaked on their own. Always felt like something was peeking in at us. The only thing I have to say about the dining room was we always saw shadows moving in the corners of our eyes. Let's say if I was in the main living area, which it connected to, my eyes would always catch a glimpse of something moving just past that narrow passage where the basement door was. As I had said, my sister's room connected to the dining room as well, through its own set of stairs. She told me oftentimes at night she would just hide under her blankets. She would hear the door creak, and it would sound like something was walking up the stairs. She never saw anything, but she heard it, and it terrified her. My mom and her friend were sitting at the kitchen island chatting one night, and there was a can of soda sitting on the countertop. Mid-conversation, the can had fallen over on its side and rolled to the opposite end of the island where it just sat still. My mom and her friend just stopped and stared at each other. Her friend grabbed the can and put it back to where it had been. A few seconds later, it fell over again and rolled a second time. Around the time we first moved in, my brother had a friend over. My brother had given him a tour of the home while the rest of the family were out getting groceries. When we got back home, his friend frantically told me that I should not sleep in that bedroom. I asked him why. I remember thinking he was probably just trying to scare me so that I'd give up my bigger bedroom to my brother. But he informed me that as he and my brother were climbing the stairs and rounded the corner, my bedroom door was closed, but through the gap under the door, which was at their eye level, they witnessed feet crossing one side of the room to the other. My brother had called out to me, thinking that it was me, but there was no answer. He opened the door and the room was empty. His friend told him that he felt very dark vibes in this house, and he never came back after that. I recall being home from school one afternoon and my sister was at her friend's. My mom was at work. I was in the living area when I heard the door to my mom's room all the way up on the third floor slamming shut. I climbed the stairs to find no one anywhere in the house. I checked the windows to see if they were open. They weren't. There wasn't a draft in the house. The air was cold in the hallway though. I ran down to my bedroom and sank under my covers, about to put my headphones on when I heard feet running above me. Again, it's my mom's room. From one corner to the other, it's when I heard the door open and slam shut again. Stuff like this happened on the regular. I think the freakiest one was a story that my mom told me where she was sleeping and she woke up in the middle of the night choking. It felt as though somebody was strangling her. Her boyfriend at the time was sleeping next to her and she was trying to wake him up to tell him that she needed help, but he just grunted and rolled over. She said she felt a pressure on her chest, like someone was putting all their body weight on her and wrapping their hands around her throat. It eventually went away, but she didn't like sleeping in that room for obvious reasons. And this ends Scary Stories with Zane Morgan Crafts, at least for this year. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and if you did, let me know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out my Patreon. You get access to behind the scenes stuff, such as photos from the house that I just told you about, and for $5 you get access to all my STLs. So check it out, and thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.